It was around 3:30 a.m. when Shauna returned home after a long shift at work. The streets were silent, and everything appeared normal. As she pulled into her garage and stepped inside, likely looking forward to rest, someone was already there, lurking in the shadows. Moments later, a horrific event unfolded. By sunrise, her home was swarming with police, and the discoveries made during the investigation shocked everyone. Shauna was born on March 13, 1966, in Salt Lake City, Utah, amidst snow-capped mountains and the traditions of a deeply rooted Mormon community. She was one of 7 siblings and stood out from a young age for her creativity, often losing herself in books or sketching intricate floral designs. School was more than academics for her. Her vibrant spirit and magnetic charm made her unforgettable. She became a cheerleader and was known for her wide circle of friends. During her teenage years, her family relocated eastward, first to Pennsylvania, then to North Carolina, each move shaping her resilience and fueling her dream of creating a life entirely her own. That dream began to take shape in 1994, when at 28, Shauna made a bold move. She left behind the familiar and ventured west to Las Vegas, Nevada, a city alive with energy and endless opportunities for reinvention. The city of lights and luck embraced Shauna amidst its dazzling chaos. She started her new life working in a luxury department store, where her natural charm and warmth shone in every customer interaction. Later, she transitioned into the hospitality industry, first waiting tables at the Fiesta Hotel, and eventually securing a coveted position at the prestigious Palms Casino Resort. Amid the glamour and high-stakes clientele, Shauna flourished. Her colleagues became like family, and her work provided both fulfillment and financial stability. She had a radiant presence, blonde hair, an elegant sense of style, and a poised figure that naturally drew attention. Yet it wasn't her appearance that captivated people. It was her effortless kindness, infectious laughter, and the genuine way she connected with others. Friends remembered her as energetic, optimistic, and devoted, someone who could find a sense of magic in even the simplest everyday moments. In 2002, Shauna's life took a new turn when she met George TFA. Tall, athletic, and confident, he made a strong first impression. His background was impressive: a former high school football standout and prom king, a West Point graduate, and later a U.S. Army engineer turned firefighter. Beyond his accomplishments, he possessed a magnetic presence and a compassionate heart. George was known for helping others, including supporting his mother, who cared for his disabled sister. From the start, Shauna and George shared an immediate and intense connection. Friends and family admired how effortlessly they fit together. Two driven, charismatic individuals seemingly destined for one another. Their bond deepened with the birth of their daughter, Madison. Motherhood became Shauna's world. She doted on her daughter, spending hours singing, laughing, and creating timeless memories. On March 16, 2006, Shauna and George celebrated their love with a beachside wedding in Hawaii. Surrounded by ocean waves and warm breezes, the ceremony felt like a fairy tale. Yet beneath the beauty, challenges were quietly emerging. 2 years into their marriage, tensions began to surface. The 2008 housing market crash hit George hard, sending financial stress rippling through their relationship. Shauna's love of spending clashed with George's instinct to save. Small disagreements escalated into frequent, intense arguments. George's frustration gradually morphed into something darker. He grew possessive, critical, and cold, often delivering cutting remarks in front of Madison. Compounding the strain was George's growing connection with Noel Stevens, a homeless man he had brought into their lives to assist with yard work. George had always felt compassion for the downtrodden, but Shauna never trusted Stevens. His constant presence unnerved her, widening the emotional rift in their home. Over the months, tension between Shauna and George intensified, and the bond that had once held them together finally began to fracture. After nearly a decade together, Shauna made the difficult choice to leave the relationship. Taking their daughter Madison with her, she relocated to a quiet suburban community just outside Las Vegas, seeking space and distance to gain clarity. Though she had stepped away, divorce was not yet on the table. Her heart still held fragments of hope. Perhaps with time and counseling, they could reconcile. Both Shauna and George agreed to give marriage counseling a try. It was a final effort to salvage what was left of their marriage. While the counseling sessions offered moments of reflection, they couldn't bridge the emotional gap. Shauna and George continued to live apart, and the longer the separation lasted, the harder it became to envision reconciliation. By September 2012, Shauna's optimism had dimmed, and the future she once imagined felt increasingly out of reach. Then something unexpected shattered whatever sense of security remained. One evening, Shauna returned home from work to find her house ransacked. Drawers had been rifled through, belongings scattered, and key personal items missing: an engagement ring, underwear, a bikini, and a black dress. Even more bizarre, the intruder had left a small, folded pair of boxers on the washing machine and helped themselves to vodka from the fridge. The intrusion left Shauna shaken to her core. This didn't feel like a random burglary. It felt deeply personal. Though unsettled, she tried to push forward, focusing on work and caring for Madison. Yet the sense of unease never fully lifted. In the early hours of September 29, 2012, Shauna finished her casino shift, clocking out precisely at 3:01 a.m. She exited through the employee door and slipped into her car for the familiar 30-minute drive home, a route she had taken countless times before, but this one would be her last. Around 3:30 a.m., Shauna arrived, pulled into her garage, and entered through the interior door. As Shauna made her way toward the staircase, she never noticed the attacker lurking in the shadows. A sudden, violent strike to the head with a hammer sent her crashing to the floor. The assault was merciless and silent. Despite Shauna's frantic pleas, sobbing, confused, desperate, her attacker offered no response. Blow after blow rained down until her body went still. The killer then fled through the same garage door Shauna had entered, taking the hammer with him. Hours later, just after 9 a.m., George finished his shift at the fire station. Following their shared custody arrangement, he went to pick up Madison from his mother's house, unaware of the horror that had unfolded in Shauna's home. George made his way to Shauna's home to collect some of Madison's belongings. Immediately, something felt off. The garage door was wide open. Shauna had always been meticulous. She never left the garage open overnight. That small detail sent a jolt of dread through him as he stepped inside. Inside, chaos reigned. Signs of a struggle were everywhere. Then he saw her, Shauna, lying motionless on the floor, blood pooling around her. George dialed 911, reporting that he had found his wife unresponsive. His voice carried an unsettling calm at times, though moments of hesitation betrayed the shock and disbelief he felt. Amid the chaos, he also mentioned Madison, asking if he could take their daughter to his mother's house for safety. When first responders arrived, they were met with a scene of sheer horror. Shauna lay motionless on the floor, drenched in blood, while the house bore signs of a violent struggle. The ferocity of the attack left investigators stunned. Initial impressions suggested a gunshot wound, but closer examination revealed a different reality. Shauna had been struck repeatedly with a blunt instrument, each blow brutal and unrelenting. Her hands bore bruises and lacerations from defending herself, evidence of her desperate fight in those final moments. Her courage was undeniable. Detectives immediately focused on George, following standard protocol that scrutinizes those closest to the victim. However, George had a solid alibi. He had been on a full 24-hour shift at the fire station, confirmed by both colleagues and supervisors, removing him from suspicion. With George ruled out, investigators widened their scope. Shauna's murder sent shockwaves through her network of friends and coworkers, many of whom worked late shifts at the Palms Casino Resort. The sheer randomness and brutality of the attack, coupled with the earlier break-in, left everyone feeling vulnerable. Whispers spread. Had someone been watching them too? Was this a random act of violence, or something far more personal? Detectives revisited the break-in from just 3 weeks earlier. That intrusion had left Shauna shaken. Several personal items were taken: underwear, a bikini, her engagement ring, but the most unsettling detail was what had been left behind: a small, neatly folded pair of men's boxers on the washing machine. It wasn't typical burglary behavior, and now, in light of the murder, that eerie detail seemed almost like a sinister warning. Investigators finally got a crucial lead when neighbors reported hearing loud, rhythmic thuds between 3:30 and 4 a.m. on the morning of Shauna's murder. The timing aligned almost perfectly with her arrival home, indicating she was likely attacked within minutes of stepping inside. Shortly afterward, more evidence emerged near a trail by the Willowbrook Apartments, roughly half a mile from her home. Shauna's personal belongings, her cell phone, health card, and makeup, were found discarded there, suggesting the killer had fled on foot in that direction. Attention soon turned to a man well known in the Las Vegas community. William Big Will Penix, a handyman who also mentored recently released inmates. One of those men, nicknamed Hart, made a chilling confession in an unsettlingly casual tone. He admitted to attacking a woman with a hammer, providing authorities with a terrifying connection to Shauna's case. Hart even recounted with a disturbing grin how the hammer had eventually broken from the force of the blows. At first, William Big Will Penix wasn't sure what to make of the confession, but when news coverage of Shauna's murder aired, the pieces fell into place. The details matched perfectly. He immediately contacted the authorities. Penix explained that Hart often hung around a local Albertsons, scavenging and selling drugs near a Chevron gas station across the street. Officers quickly located him there, and during the arrest, Hart was found in possession of narcotics. He revealed his real identity, Noel Stevens. Stevens wasn't new to law enforcement. He had a history of petty theft, drug offenses, and squatting. But now, he faced something far more serious: suspicion in a brutal murder. During interrogation, Stevens denied killing Shauna, though he admitted to living in a tent on a remote hill roughly 8 miles from the Las Vegas Strip. Police feared Stevens might have hidden evidence at his remote camp, so they deployed helicopters to scan the area and conducted a thorough search of the tent. Their efforts quickly paid off. Inside, investigators found a pair of pants soaked in blood. Forensic analysis confirmed the worst: the blood belonged to Shauna. The walls of the case were closing in fast, but one critical question remained: why her? The answer came from examining digital records. Phone data revealed a shocking connection. Stevens had been in frequent contact with George, Shauna's estranged husband and father of her child. Their relationship ran far deeper and darker than anyone had suspected. George had hired Stevens for odd jobs around the house, but investigators alleged he had also manipulated Stevens, preying on his vulnerabilities and desperation to orchestrate the deadly attack. For just $600, George set a deadly plan in motion, orchestrating the murder of his wife. From the outset, Shauna's sister, Paula, had harbored deep suspicions. Despite George's seemingly airtight alibi, she refused to believe he was innocent. She flew to Las Vegas to support the investigation, convinced that something far more sinister had occurred behind closed doors, and her intuition proved terrifyingly accurate. Police combing Stevens' campsite uncovered damning evidence: clothing stolen during Shauna's earlier break-in, and a vodka bottle bearing Stevens' DNA. The bottle matched the one taken during the prior burglary. Nearby, investigators found a cardboard packaging tag corresponding to a hammer, one of the weapons used in the attack. Surveillance footage soon sealed the link. George and Stevens had been spotted together at a hardware store, casually purchasing a hammer, gloves, and a knife. What had initially appeared to be a random act of violence now reeked of cold-blooded premeditation. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, Stevens confessed. He revealed that George had paid him $600 upfront, promising thousands more upon completion of the murder. Over several weeks, the two meticulously plotted every detail. Phone records corroborated Stevens' statement: 87 calls between them in September 2012, 5 of which occurred the night before the killing. Stevens explained that George provided keys to Shauna's home and even suggested he dress in black and scope the house ahead of time on September 29th. On the night of the attack, Stevens hid in a closet, waiting for Shauna to ascend the stairs. Emerging from the shadows in a ski mask, he struck her with a hammer. When the handle broke, he used the steel head to finish the assault. Afterward, Stevens vanished into the night. He later led investigators to the burial site where he had discarded the murder weapon, still stained with Shauna's blood. On October 8th, detectives visited George's family to inform them that he had become a primary suspect. The revelation shocked his mother and sister, who struggled to believe he could commit such a crime. Under mounting pressure, George reacted dramatically. Learning the police were closing in, he drove recklessly through Las Vegas and crashed his car into a concrete barrier. Investigators noted there were no skid marks or signs of braking, leading them to suspect a suicide attempt. He survived, thanks in part to his seatbelt, and was immediately taken into custody at the hospital. Both George and Noel Stevens were charged with murder. Stevens pleaded guilty and testified against George in exchange for avoiding the death penalty, receiving a sentence of 42 years to life. George's trial began in August 2015, with Noel Stevens serving as the prosecution's key witness. Despite his troubled past, including drug use and ongoing mental health struggles, Stevens described a deeply manipulative relationship with George. According to Stevens, George constantly vented about Shauna, frustrated with her spending habits and bitter over the breakdown of their marriage. When George first suggested eliminating Shauna, Stevens laughed it off. But when the reward was raised to $5,000, he agreed, though he ultimately only received the original $600. Stevens later pawned Shauna's engagement ring, stolen during the earlier break-in. He also revealed that George insisted on using a hammer with a fiberglass handle, fearing a wooden one might break. Ironically, the fiberglass hammer had been seized by police in an unrelated case, forcing Stevens to use a wooden hammer, which did indeed snap during the assault. At trial, the defense sought to undermine Stevens' credibility, highlighting his troubled past, addictions, and even his claims of hearing voices, portraying him as unreliable. They insisted the tools purchased were merely for home repairs and nothing more. But Stevens' testimony was far from the only evidence implicating George. Surveillance footage, phone records, Shauna's blood found on Stevens' belongings, and a timeline that matched the murder all painted a cohesive picture. Piece by piece, the evidence revealed a calculated, premeditated crime. The prosecution depicted George as a man obsessed with control, unable to cope with financial hardship, a failing marriage, or the loss of authority over Shauna. Witnesses recounted how a once disciplined, respected man had become dangerously manipulative. Despite character testimony from family members asserting he was hardworking and principled, the overwhelming evidence painted a far darker reality. In 2015, George was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 32 to 81 years for related charges. He later appealed, claiming his actions were influenced by a mix of medications, including Adderall, estrogen blockers, and painkillers prescribed after a workplace injury. In a handwritten statement, George asserted that the drugs had impaired his judgment. He also argued that his defense attorney had failed him by neglecting his mental health history and not requesting a psychiatric evaluation. The appeal was denied, and the conviction remained intact. Amid the legal battles, the deepest loss belonged to Madison, Shauna's daughter, who had witnessed the fallout of her mother's murder. She now lives with Shauna's mother, safe from the man who sought to destroy their lives. Out of this unimaginable tragedy, Shauna's family worked to build a life of stability and love, creating a space of resilience and care for Madison. Justice for Shauna became more than a verdict, it evolved into a mission. Her story has been used to raise awareness about domestic abuse, manipulation, and the warning signs that can precede violence. It stands as a cautionary tale of love twisted into something deadly, trust weaponized, and a justice system that, despite its flaws, ultimately delivered accountability. Through it all, Shauna's memory endures. A woman who lived with warmth, laughter, and generosity, whose life, though tragically cut short, continues to inspire vigilance, compassion, and the fight for justice.